Okay, Manish, over to you.
Wonderful. So this is my last lecture in this series on exceptional groups. Welcome to the lecture. Today, I plan to give some exposition on general results and constructions rather than focus on any particular theme. So I will, in particular, will not give proofs of any statements, but maybe we will discuss those as we come to them. So let me first say a few things about isotropic semi-simple groups. So by definition, so let's fix a connected semi-simple group over a field K. We call it isotropic over K if there is a K-split torus of positive dimension in the group. Otherwise, so if there is no such K-split torus, then we call the group anisotropic over K. One example of that is the standard example one gives. In fact, from there, the terminology of isotropic or anisotropic comes is the space of a vector space with a non-degenerate quadratic form, and you look at the spatial orthogonal group or the orthogonal group. But I want to take the spatial one because I said connected here. So then Q is isotropic is equivalent to saying this group is isotropic over K. So as soon as you have a non-trivial zero, isotropic for the quadratic form means there is a non-trivial zero living over K. So as soon as the quadratic form has a non-trivial zero, the group SOVQ acquires a K-split torus of positive dimension and the other way around. So this is, in fact, you will find this, again, I maybe overemphasize this book by Jacobson, Basic Algebra, Volume 1. I think in that there is this chapter on vector spaces with Hermitian forms, quadratic forms, and so on. There you will find this as an exercise, but of course not stated in this language, but contents are there, so one can solve this exercise. Second example is of if you take a central division algebra over K and then look at this group G of m by m matrices with entries in D and determinant 1, so to say, then G is isotropic over K if and only if m is at least 2. So here, for example, if you take the diagonal matrices with entries in the field, that is a K-split torus of positive dimension. So if M is 1, then this group is anisotropic. So isotropic groups are studied using or classified using what are called Tits indices. So given such a semi-simple group, suppose I have a semi-simple isotropic group over K, that means I have a split K-split torus, so I can find a maximal biggest possible K-split torus in G. So let's label it as S. And let's take T to be a maximal torus containing S and defined over K. Then we have the usual data of roots with respect to T. Fix a basis, the simple roots or basis of that root system. And let's define delta sub 0 or delta naught to be those simple set of those simple roots which vanish on the K-split torus S. And K delta, so this is a notation borrowed from the standard paper of Borel, Tits, and so on. So you will see these kind of notations in Tits paper or Borel, Tits paper. So these are all those simple roots which do not vanish on S. Okay, so then we can look at this restriction map and so on. So finally, what I want to say is look at the centralizer of this K-split torus in G. Then one knows it's a connected reductive group defined over K. And let's look at the derived subgroup of that. That means the semi-simple part. So that's a reductive group. I'm looking at the semi-simple part of that. one can show that, of course, it is defined over K, and in fact, it is anisotropic over K. So any K-split torus is killed in this by doing this operation. So you actually get a K anisotropic group. And this is all such, so this, in this construction, we fixed a maximal K-split torus. And then again, there is a theorem due to Borel and Tits, which says that any such two tori are conjugate under K rational element in G. So any two such tori are conjugates, and then that goes through all this data gets isomorphic to the other data you acquire. So this anisotropic kernel is determined up to conjugacy. So then we devise, and one can easily see that this delta 0, that was the set of all simple roots which vanish on S, that is the set of simple roots for this anisotropic kernel, okay, with respect to this particular maximal torus, which is clear. And of course, to do all this, there is some compatible ordering one has to fix, but because I am fixing basis and so on, so that is required. Equivalently, you fix a Borel containing T and so on. So the index of so-called Tits index of G is defined as follows. So any questions so far? I can repeat whatever I said. Okay, so I am trying to define now. Yeah.
So in the centralizer, when you take this you take the connected component, right, in the first phase, or because in general it.
No, doesn't matter. I'm just looking at the derived subgroup. This is what matters to me.
Okay, the derived one. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so this index is going to be defined as follows. So you let gamma denote the Galois group of separable closure of K over K. Then the while group, which is normalizer of T modulo T, that one knows acts simply transitively on the set of bases for this root system. Equivalently, you can look at all the Borel set of all Borel subgroups containing T. So on that set, this while group acts simply transitively. Simply transitively means no non-trivial element will fix anything in the set, and it's transitive action. So using this, you look at, so we define a new action of the Galois group on this. So as such, given a Galois element, it will not map delta to delta. But so when you apply gamma to delta, then it will give me a new simple system. And using simple transitivity, I can find a unique gamma which connects this delta to that gamma delta. Using that, we define this action. So this is called the star action of Galois group on delta. So I hope it is clear. So delta and gamma delta are not equal, but I can get back gamma delta to delta by using a unique while group element. So this is the action of the new action called star action on the simple system delta. In any case, if I denote by D the Dynkin diagram of G, this star action is not just a set theoretic action, it actually acts by diagram automorphisms. So that's very important fact. We get diagram action of the Galois group on the Dynkin diagram by diagram automorphism. So this is all one should remember to begin with. And then one can check that G is of inner type if and only if delta action on delta, if the star action on delta is trivial. Otherwise, it is outer type. And besides that, this stabilizes delta 0 and the complement. Okay, so these are really important facts of this action. And one can describe the orbits by saying two simple roots are in the same star orbit if and only if their restrictions to the maximal K-split torus coincide. So these are pretty standard things in the theory. I have taken all this from Titz's paper on classification of semi-simple algebraic groups. In that, he describes a recipe, so an algorithm how to, or a recipe how to make this diagram now. So start with the Dynkin diagram of the group. Then we want to indicate the orbits of the Galois action on that. So how do you do that? So you start with the diagram belonging to the, and then you draw it in such a way that vertices which belong to the same orbit are put close to each other or above each other. And the orbits whose elements belong to the complement of delta zero, they are circled. So I'll give examples of this. And those orbits are called distinguished orbits. And in this, so the picture typically you will get are like this. Sorry about this. I should have drawn them above, but I postponed them below. So the typical pictures you will see are like this. So this is an index of a group of type Bn. So here these vertices are circled. That means these are the orbits. So each orbit has just single element here. These are circled and the rest is not circled. So, and in this example, this is a group of type E6. Here there are two distinguished orbits, namely the orbit containing this root, just 6, and there is another distinguished orbit containing two roots, 1 and 5. So these two are in the same Galois orbit, these two are in the same orbit. 3 is also, of course, in a single orbit. 2 and 4, because they are drawn above or whatever, in the same vertical line, they are supposed to be in the same Galois orbit. But these are not distinguished orbits, these are. So this is, so if you omit the circled orbits, whatever remains will be the Dynkin diagram for the anisotropic kernel. So that is the description of these indices. So in this, once you have this index, from there you can read various things about the group. So this is again, once again, let me repeat. You draw the diagram in such a way that two vertices which belong to the same orbit are placed close to each other, typically in a vertical line. And the orbits, then you look at the orbits which do not belong to delta zero. None of those elements in that orbit belong to delta zero. Those are circled and they are called distinguished orbits. And if you remove the distinguished orbits from the diagram, whatever remains is the Dynkin diagram for the anisotropic kernel. And those, so if you just look at the picture of those distinguished orbits, that also gives you a root system over K, which may not be reduced root system. That is what is called a relative root system for that type. Okay, so I will come to those examples again. Any questions on this? I will give some more examples, but let me just come to the next type of a rather special class of isotropic groups called quasi-split groups. These are extremely important in various studies. So I just wanted to say this because I have something in mind here. So definition is that a group G, which is, let's assume semi-simple connected. One need not assume semi-simple for this. We define it to be quasi-split over K if there is a Borel subgroup in the group which is defined over K. By definition, Borel means maximal connected solvable subgroup. Now, because this is defined over K, you can see that the usual Galois action will leave the Borel subgroup stable, right? Because it's defined over K. That is typically what happens. Anything that is Galois invariant is defined over K and the other way around. So the Galois group action will leave the Borel subgroup stable. I'm not saying it will be pointwise fixed, it will be stable under the Galois action. And because of that, that star action that I defined will be trivial, because that star action was typically taking the usual Galois action acted on the simple system and then pulling it back to the simple system by some Galois element, by some while group element. Now that while group element will be trivial. So the star action is actually trivial, and then this is obvious. If S is equal to the maximal torus, then the group is split. And this is if and only if G K split if and only if S is equal to T. G is quasi K split or K quasi split if and only if the anisotropic kernel is trivial. Because what does it mean to say this is trivial? That means the centralizer of the maximal K split torus must be full torus, and that exactly is equivalent to saying it is quasi split. So this is the situation. These are all equivalent. G is quasi split over K if and only if there is no anisotropic kernel, if and only if the centralizer of maximal K split torus is a maximal K torus, a K maximal torus. Again, G is quasi split if and only if in the index diagram, all vertices, if you look at the circled vertices, here I will give some examples, then they should cover all the vertices of the diagram. So all vertices are circled, which means there is no anisotropic kernel. So this much I wanted to say about quasi-split groups. I will come to examples of this. Now, if you take a split simple group of type phi is the root system, then one can see that quasi-split groups are classified by this cohomology set. So the group of outer automorphisms is a finite group which consists of typically a 2-element group or a 3-element group or a 6-element group. And if you look at H1 of, for example, if it's an order 2 symmetry, then H1K will classify all kinds of quadratic extensions of K, including the split extension. Similarly, if the outer automorphisms are order 3 group, then they will classify all cubic field extensions, or including the split ones. And if it is if it is an order 6 group, which is S3, then it will classify all cubic Étale algebras. Right? So typically quasi-split group is constructed by Galois descent from a Galois extension given by the, see, this set is just a set of all homomorphisms from the Galois group to this group, right? Because the Galois action here is trivial. So this is just set of all homomorphisms from the Galois group to this. And that will tell you that using that homomorphism, you will define a new Galois action on the split group and take fixed points of that action to get the corresponding quasi-split group. I know this is a bit technical, but the point is any group can be obtained as a twisted version of a quasi-split group over a given field. So these are important. So here are some examples of what I said about its index and so on. Suppose I have a quadratic form in 2n+1 variables. So this is taken from Titz's paper, and width index is R. Then we know that the quadratic form can be written as R copies of hyperbolic plane orthogonal sum with a uniquely determined anisotropic form. And then you do this calculation with respect to a suitable basis. The bilinear symmetric form has this kind of matrix, where this corresponds to the anisotropic part. These are all hyperbolic planes. And then you can see that the maximal K-split, so this is a maximal K-split torus here in this group. And then you can do the calculation, then you will see that the anisotropic kernel looks like this. Here you have ones on the diagonal, and here all of the orthogonal group of beta 0 appears. So that is your anisotropic kernel in this case. And the theorem of Tits is, so this is an example of a quasi-split group. Here all the vertices are circled, no other vertex remains here. We will see some more, I did not draw more pictures unfortunately, but we will see. So the theorem of Tits is that G is determined, so G is an isotropic group over K. It's determined up to K isomorphism by its separable closure isomorphism class, which means essentially the root data. Its K index, which is what a typical picture like this is, and its anisotropic kernel. So this is the theorem of Tit, which one calls it a theorem like Witt's theorem for quadratic forms. Okay, so if there are any questions, please raise them. I want to start a new section after this. So I will come back to quasi-split groups in a way, in a little while. So let me go to the next topic called Tits algebras of semi-simple groups. So this is a sort of invariant that one defines for these groups. This invariant lives in the Brouwer group, but I will not use Brouwer groups here. I'll spell it out what it means. So suppose I have a semi-simple group over K. Shripad, is everything okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so slow me down if I am going too fast. Yeah, so let's take a semi-simple group over K. Then, of course, over the separable closure, it is split. And then one knows that irreducible algebraic representations of G over separable closure are classified by what are called highest weights. Now, let's consider some irreducible representation. When I say algebraic, I mean as a morphism, this is a morphism of algebraic groups. That's what I mean. So fix an algebraic irreducible representation. Let me denote it by rho S of this group over separable closure into GL of some vector space, finite dimensional vector space over separable closure. And suppose this is Galois invariant. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is there is a Galois action on G separable. There is a Galois action on GLV. And then this is a homomorphism. So if I take an element of G separable acted on Galois element and then apply rho separable, that should be same as Galois action here acted on the rho separable image of that element. So that's what, there is an obvious notion of Galois invariance here. So suppose this representation is Galois invariant. In other words, what I am saying is this representation is defined over K, but not in the usual. So if it is Galois invariant, it will be defined over K as a morphism, but it will not land in these this variety because that whole thing may not descend below. So what we get instead is we get that this representation descends to a central simple algebra A over K. In the sense, I get a homomorphism rho from G to invertible elements in the group of invertible elements in A. So as an algebraic group morphism, such that when I go to the separable closure, it coincides with the representation rho S. So this is a little tricky, but what I am trying to say is if you start with a representation of the group, it does not descend to a representation in the usual sense. It doesn't go from G to GL of W. So instead it is giving us a representation in the sense it's a morphism from G to invertible elements in a central simple algebra. Okay, so we get hold of, therefore, starting from an irreducible representation of the group over separable closure, we get hold of, which is invariant over the Galois action, we get hold of a central simple K algebra A. And these are what are called Tits algebras of the group. So every highest weight, starting from any highest weight, you get hold of a central simple algebra over K. That is called a Tits algebra. So examples of this are, I'm not computing these examples. This is just there for you to know, and you can look up references at the back of the lecture. So if I take a quadratic space of even dimension, assuming the discriminant is trivial, then the even Clifford algebra breaks up as a product of two central simple algebras. Typically, they are denoted by C plus VQ and C minus VQ. So either of them, I just chose C plus, I could have written C plus minus here. Either of them is a Tits algebra for the spin group. I hope I'm making some sense. And when the dimension is odd, the even Clifford algebra itself is a central simple algebra, and one can show that it's a Tits algebra for this simply connected group. Okay, so one terminology I should have defined here, which I forgot, but I will mention it in the next section. Shripad, are there any questions?
No, nobody has raised any question in the chat box yet.
Okay. So I wanted to come back to this exceptional D4 that I talked about. So this is a D4 with a triality automorphism. So they are typically denoted like this. So there is an outer automorphism of order 3 here. There is an outer automorphism group of so all S3 automorphisms are in action here. So simply connected groups of these types, I will explain this notation in a minute. I already did actually. Suppose I have a simply connected group of one of these types which has all its algebras split. Then one can show that it occurs as isotropy subgroup of some generic point in an Albert algebra. So by your Albert algebra is under this automorphism group of the Albert algebra action. The automorphism group of an Albert algebra acts on the Albert algebra, and you can take a generic point. So in the sense I will tell you, and then calculate the stabilizer. Then you will get a group of this type. So what do I mean by a generic point? So if you take a point, it will generate a subalgebra of the Albert algebra. So we want it to have non-trivial discriminant. So we want a separable subalgebra of degree 3. Once you have that, then you will see that the isotropy of that subgroup gives you a group of either type 3D4 or 6D4. And so this describes all such groups. And another remark is isotropic groups of type D4 which have a trilateral automorphism. That means either an outer automorphism of order 3 or 3 outer automorphisms of order 2 and so on, that can be captured like this. So I wanted to say something about quasi-split D4. I think I have a feeling I'm going, maybe this is becoming a bit heavy. So I will just, brush. I just brushed this topic. If you are interested, you can ask me questions. I will get back to this. I have more to say, but I will skip it for the moment. Let me go to E6. So we already encountered E6. So here the remark is that if I take any simply connected form of E6, which has all the Tits algebras split, then you can show that it occurs as isometric group of the norm form of some Albert algebra. And those are like this. So all such groups can be described in terms of some Albert algebra. So Albert algebras come into play again and again, always when we deal with exceptional groups. And here anisotropic ones occur from Albert division algebras. And if you remember, an Albert algebra is a division algebra if and only if the norm of that algebra has no non-trivial zeros over K. So this is the description for E6 type groups which have trivial Tits algebras. Okay, so I had something about Brown algebras. Here I wanted to say how quasi-split groups of type E6 can be described. So basically, I had introduced this module to you. So on this diagonal, you have scalars, and off diagonal entries are from an Albert algebra J. And there is a product using the trace bilinear form and the cross product I had defined. You can define a product here. And okay, I have to unshare this. I just minimize this, right, Shripal?
Yeah, 1 second, Manish. Could you, so when you talked about C0 and C plus being the Tits algebras for the groups,
yeah.
What representations did you have in mind? Because sometimes even the base field can come as a Tits algebra, right? Because the representation might be defined below.
Yeah. So these are the representations corresponding to the. So this in this example, the representation corresponds to the. I don't have the diagram here, but the four those end vertices. You're right. I have to mention with what weights.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So these are also possible Tits algebras. That's
yes. I'm just saying these are possible as Tits algebras. I am not specified for what weights.
Okay.
But you can, you can look up book of involutions for details. Okay. You will find the details there. Yeah, you're right. So one can have possibilities. Yeah, so here there is some product defined using those trace form and the cross product I had defined. So I just minimize this, right, Shripal?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So and in that, if you look at the map which sends this matrix to, you keep the diagonal fixed and flip. You flip around the diagonal entries and keep the anti-diagonal entries fixed. Then this is an involution on that algebra, which I denote by Bj, J for the exceptional Jordan algebra or Albert algebra, and the map from Bj to Bj, which also along with this, it flips this also. That can be shown to be an automorphism of some sort called outer automorphism. And the quasi-split E6 is constructed by in the following way. So you start with any quadratic field extension of K, and this iota denotes the non-trivial K automorphism. And look at this construction. So this is the K subalgebra of the algebra Bj, which I constructed here. When you tensor with T with delta, but on that I take the action as theta tensored iota. So theta is this outer automorphism, iota is on the other factor, and takes the fixed points. That is this algebra. Then of course this is going to give you back this. And if you start with the split Albert algebra, then what you get here, so if you take the split Albert algebra and do what I said, then that gives rise to, so I just go to the theorem. I wanted to tell you that. So here the definition of Brown algebra is given. Brown algebra over any field is an algebra which is not necessarily associative, which is when you base change to the separable closure gives you the split Brown algebra over Ks. Split Brown algebra means the algebra here, Albert algebra, is split. Okay. And then you can show that there is a one-dimensional space of skew elements. So skew symmetric elements with respect to the involution. And suppose S0 is a generator, then you define this algebra to be type 1 if S0 square is a scalar square, otherwise type 2. And this extension that S0 gives is called discriminant of this algebra. And then here is the theorem. So type T is either type 1 or type 2. Then, so this denotes the connected component. So this automorphism group is simply connected of type TE6. So remember, E6 has an order 2 outer automorphism or Dynkin diagram automorphism group. There are 2 automorphisms. So you can, so this T denotes either you're twisting by the trivial one or the non-trivial one. So accordingly, you will get both these type of groups, and you will show, one can show that the Tits algebras are trivial for those groups, and any such group which is simply connected and has trivial Tits algebras can be constructed like this. And in this, the quasi-split group is obtained by taking automorphisms of this twist, the quadratic twist I constructed here. So this algebra. So if you take this algebra and take its automorphism, that gives you the quasi-split E6. And this E6 has rank 4 over K because the automorphisms of the split Albert algebra sits here as a subgroup. So this is all I wanted to say about quasi-split groups and so on. And E7, I do not want to enter into details, but I just mentioned the name here. They are classified by what are called non-degenerate Freudenthal triple systems. They are just some kind of jazzed up versions of similar structures that I mentioned. And they are related to Brown algebra. So details of these things you can find in some papers I have listed in the references. So things are hard here to write down, so I refrained from giving you more details here. So yeah, I'm maybe going too fast today. I don't know. I'm not getting any feedback. So any questions so far?
No, nobody else has asked a question, but I think, yeah, meaning it's going a bit fast, but that's because it's mostly theory, which either people know,
yeah,
or
so
maybe they find it a bit difficult to understand.
I think my aim was to give some kind of exposition today without proving anything. Just mention, mainly this is some kind of review. Okay, so let me say about few things about E8 here. So I'm not going to say too many details. So there is a construction due to Tits, which are called first and second constructions, which yield all Albert algebras. So I do not want to go through the details here. Typically, you have a degree 3 or 9-dimensional equivalently central simple algebra over K, and you pick a scalar, invertible scalar. Together with these two, on the 27-dimensional space D direct sum D, there is some product defined, and that makes it into an Albert algebra. And the norm form mainly of that Albert algebra looks like this. So this, and the trace form is written down and so on. Similarly, one can give a second construction starting from a quadratic field extension and a degree 3 central simple algebra with a unitary involution over that. There is a similar construction. And when you base change to this quadratic field extension, you get back the first construction. So this is a so-called twist of the first construction. So I will just skip it. But the point is, both these constructions exhaust all possible Albert algebras. And division algebras are precisely those for which the scalar parameter is not a norm from the central simple algebra involved. So in this E8, I will just tell you how one gets it, but in a very cursory way. So Albert division algebras yield certain graphs, so which are actually buildings for this group. They are called Moufang hexagons, and the automorphisms of that graph gives you a group of type E7882. So this is supposed to mean it's a group of type E8 with K rank 2 and anisotropic kernel is E6. So this is all encoded in this picture. And the theorem is that any such group occurs in the fashion I told you. So these are all proved in Tits and Weiss have a monograph called Moufang hexagons. So one can find details of this there. And a recent paper by some paper which I forgot to put in the reference. Weiss has written an appendix there giving a proof of this. So yeah, so these groups have the anisotropic kernel as simply connected E6 arising from an Albert division K algebra as anisotropic kernels. So all these groups can be described using Albert division algebras. Okay, so much technicality. I'm coming to the end of my lecture rather fast today, and it is going to end with a uniform construction of certain forms of all the exceptional Lie algebras, and that will also give us exceptional groups in the following sense. So the thing I'm going to talk about is called Freudenthal-Tits magic square. So far we have been trying to write down algebraic groups as automorphisms of some non-associative algebra, finite dimensional. Now let's look at this little bit, some exercise actually. Suppose I have a representation of an algebraic group. Then if you differentiate it, you get a representation of the Lie algebra on the same vector space, which just means this is a Lie algebra homomorphism, right? And you can define for a vector V in V the isotropy subgroup in capital G. So those G which fix V. So this is a subgroup of G by definition. And the same way we can define a subalgebra of the Lie algebra here, Lie algebra of G, which is all those elements in the Lie algebra which kill V. But I have suppressed rho here and I have suppressed D rho here, okay? So those maps are involved here. Then one can show that the Lie algebra of this isotropic group of V is contained in this Lie subalgebra, right? I have some remarks from this observation. The following follows immediately. If I write a group, algebraic group as automorphisms of some algebra, then the Lie algebra is given by the derivations of that algebra. Sorry, here I should have written A here. I somehow
Yeah,
B
I was going to.
There is no B there.
Yeah.
So
maybe you did it just to make sure that people are attentive.
Yeah, thanks, because at least you are attentive. Yeah, so these are all derivations from A to A. That's a Lie algebra with respect to the usual Lie bracket. And here is a lemma without proof again, which is really an exercise more or less. Well, assuming some things. Suppose G is a semi-simple algebraic group over K. Then the image of the adjoint map is actually connected identity component of the automorphisms of the Lie algebra. Because see, automorphisms of Lie algebra will always involve the diagram automorphisms also. So to remove them, I am putting a circle there. And then one knows that the Lie algebra is semi-simple and every derivation of the Lie algebra is inner in the sense it's a combination of the usual add derivations. And if I start with a semi-simple Lie algebra, on the other hand, then the same thing holds. This equality holds, and G is also isomorphic to add G. So we have these isomorphisms, and that tells us that if I take G as the identity component of automorphisms of the Lie algebra, and then take the Lie algebra of that will give me back G. Okay? So I'm not saying anything very deep here, I think. So I start with a Lie algebra which is semi-simple, take the connected component of identity of the automorphism group, then that group has Lie algebra as the Lie algebra you started with. So what I want to say is, suppose I have a recipe to construct simple exceptional Lie algebras, that will also give me simple exceptional Lie groups which are adjoint type, that's all. So they will be recovered like this. So this is the reason for the Lie algebra exercises. And now I come to the magic square. So this is last section of the lecture. I think I have gone amazingly fast today. Maybe we can discuss or chit chat later anything you did not follow. So let us begin explanation of this diagram, this square. So start with a composition algebra C over K, which I remember had introduced in my first or second lecture. And let's denote by C0 the subspace of trace 0 elements in C. And I denote by J upper C. I had actually forgotten this, so I put it later, as the 3 by 3 Hermitian matrices I had introduced. This is a Jordan algebra. And in that I put a 0 below to denote the trace 0 elements in this Jordan algebra. Now on C0, I can define a sort of product as follows. So by product, I just mean I combine two elements to give me yet another trace 0 element, and that is simple. I define A star B to be AB minus half of trace of A times B. You can see that this is trace 0 element. Okay, and let's denote by L for A and B in C. L sub A and R sub B denote the left homothety by A and right homothety by B. And then I can I can take their Lie bracket as endomorphisms of C. This is the Lie bracket. But I define dA comma B to be Lie bracket of LA with LB plus Lie bracket of LA with RB plus RA with RB. Then one can check that this is a derivation of C. So this belongs to derivation from C to C. So derivation has the usual meaning. I am not defining what a derivation means. Derivation means D of AB is dA times B plus A times dB. So that's what a derivation is. One checks that this is a derivation. Similarly, I can define a star product on trace 0 part of JC as instead of half here, I have to put 1/3 to calibrate the trace, and this will have trace 0. So this is just some notation fixing going on. Now finally we have the construction. So take another composition algebra D and denote by script L C comma JD. So remember JD is H3D some gamma. Okay. Denote this as the following vector space. Derivations of C. So this is a Lie algebra. Direct sum C0 tensor JD0. Then direct sum derivations of JC. So this is a Jordan algebra. On that, we define a Lie bracket on this vector space. Define a Lie bracket in the following way. Derivation of C is a Lie algebra already. So when you restrict two elements here, their bracket coincides here. On the other hand, if I take something from derivations of C and something from derivations of here there is a mistake. There should be there is a mistake here, huh? And just give me 1 second. I'll just confirm this. I seem to have made a mistake there. Anyway, I've gone so fast today that some little bit of extra time I'm taking to correct my mistake. Yeah. So here the mistake is that the C is D. Okay. I goofed up here. There is a D here. So if I take a derivation here and take a derivation there, then their Lie bracket is 0. Okay. So here this is correct, but here there is a mistake. Please correct that. So that bracket is 0. And then I have to define how various bracket. So I have defined bracket here. Of course, bracket here again coincides with something there will follow from here. And this with this is 0. So let's see how the mixed things happen now. So let's take C tensor X belonging here with delta plus delta prime. So delta is from here and delta prime is from derivations of JD. Then their action is written down by some formula here. So that describes complete, and then how two elements like this interact with each other, that is also written down. So we have some formulae for the bracket, and then one has a theorem that this actually is a Lie algebra. And here is the whole recipe gives you the following. As C and D, so remember these are composition algebras. As C and D vary over possible composition algebras, we can display the types of the Lie algebra L, C, J, D in a table as follows. So this is the table. So here I have listed small k, capital Q, and capital C as the base field, the quadratic extension of the base field, a quaternion algebra or octonion algebra. And here I have listed these 3x3 Hermitian matrices with entries in these composition algebras. So here you choose any composition algebra and choose any of these Jordan algebras, and then we have this construction that will give you Lie algebras of these various types. So the magic part here is the following. You will notice that this is a symmetric table. Whereas, so that means what? LCJD is actually equal to LDJC. Whereas when you write that down as the construction, in that it is not clear that it is symmetric. This definition certainly is not symmetric in C and D. Apparently so, right? It's not symmetric. But the table tells you that those two are same. So instead of starting from C, if you had taken D here and taken JC, you would get the same Lie algebra as starting with C and taking the Jordan algebra JD. So this is the recipe, and by what remark I said, you take the automorphisms of connected automorphisms of this Lie algebra to get connected groups of these types. So still this doesn't construct all possible types, but we get all a uniform construction for all exceptional Lie algebras. This is what I had planned for this lecture. Yeah, so Shripad, I am done with my lecture as such, but if there are questions, I'll be happy to take them.
What can be gamma here?
Gamma can be any scalar, any 3x3 matrices, any 3x3 matrix with entries from the base field. So I had given
different
a
forms
composition.
of the groups by choosing different gammas.
Say it again.
Do we get different forms of the groups by choosing different gammas?
Yes, yes, yes.
So
So here,
what you have, so these are only the types.
these are only the types.
Wow.
Exactly.
And you said some were predicted by using this table.
Yeah, so this table was not complete and they completed by symmetry. So some entries were missing here. That's what I remember. I haven't found a reference for that. But using symmetry, some entries were filled. And indeed, the constructions were then proven to give you those Lie algebras. Somewhat like the periodic table.
But the Lie algebras existed since quite some time, no? Meaning only the description was proven.
Yeah. So this is a construction. So Lie algebras of existed, meaning the split Lie algebras existed. So these are not necessarily split. I am
Okay.
taking arbitrary composition algebras here.
Wow.
So you will get some forms of these split Lie algebras.
Okay.
So yeah, so these are new in the sense these were not known definitely. So this was independently obtained by Freudenthal and Tits. So I think what is impressive is this uniform construction. And there is a lot more material on magic squares and so on. I have given you the simplest possibility. Things are going on and on. People have done a lot of research on magic square itself and taken it far ahead, I think. So there is a construction due to Winberg, apparently, which explains this symmetry. Whereas in Tits and Freudenthal's construction, the symmetry is not clear. It looks like magic here, but the way Winberg constructs, the magic is gone. So it's up to you. So you should either ask the magician what is the answer for the trick, then the magic is no more fun. Then you say, oh, that is cheating. Yeah, so this is the lecture, and then I wrote down some references here. So in lecture 1, the basic material on algebraic groups can be found in Springer and Humphrey's books, and then Sayre's book for the theory of forms and Galois cohomology. Lecture 2, I took most of the material from Jacobson's Basic Algebra Volume 1, and later parts where we discuss some business on G2 and so on, of course, is from Springer Feldkamp. And then lecture 3, I used Milne's notes for algebraic groups and Springer Feldkamp for, of course, F4, E6, etc. Lecture 4, where I mentioned proofs for E6. And then there is a paper of Springer called Some Groups of Type E7. So that's where I got that material from without proving it. So proof can be found in that paper. And lecture 5, finally, today's lecture, I looked at this paper of Tits called Classification of Algebraic Semisimple Groups. There is another paper which in English means linear representations of linear irreducible representations of reductive groups over arbitrary fields. So this paper has the information on Tits algebras and various things, whatever I mentioned. And then isotropic trilitarian groups are completely constructed in this paper of Garibaldi. And then he also talks about those Brown algebras and so on in his paper called Structurable Algebras, Groups of Type E6 and E7. And I have taken, of course, mostly these lectures were based on some mini course, again, I had given at ISI Bangalore many years back. These notes are available on the internet, so I have borrowed some material from there. And then this book of Tits and Weiss called Moufang Hexagons. And of course, the famous book of involutions for Tits algebras and so on. You can look up that book. And then this book, Introduction to Non-Associative Algebras by Schaffer, is I looked at it for the magic square. And the proof for the magic square is not completely given in Schaffer's book, but you can see the proof in the book called Exceptional Lie Algebras by Jacobson. And structure and representations of Jordan algebras by Jacobson was used in the parts where I defined, I don't remember, but yeah, this was used to write down the eigenspaces for the idempotents. Yeah, primitive idempotents. So this is where I had used this book. Yeah, so these are all the references, and there are more, of course, you will find in references in these various references. So this is all I had to say.
Let's thank Manish for this excellent course. So,
Thank you for giving me this opportunity to. This has really helped me a lot. So I have stopped presenting it, Sripad.
I will also stop recording.
Yeah.